FBI officers were disturbed after discovering that even when a prisoner was released into an open area, they couldn't escape. Yet, 3 prisoners managed to break out from right under the authorities' noses. The most surprising part was that for the next 10 hours, the authorities couldn't figure out how they had escaped. Not only the FBI, but also 3 top-level agencies struggled to solve this mystery. We're talking about an escape that's puzzled people for over 60 years and has become one of the biggest mysteries in the world. This happened on Alcatraz, a small island in the Pacific Ocean. The island is just 22 acres large, but it was once home to some of the most dangerous criminals. Alcatraz is built on a large rock surrounded by water, earning it the nickname The Rock. Its location in the middle of the ocean, combined with 15-foot-high fences and constant surveillance, made it seem impossible for anyone to escape. The island is also known for its harsh weather with strong winds and high waves. In 1934, Alcatraz was declared a federal prison, and the security was heightened. Once someone was brought there, it was nearly impossible for them to escape. But on July 12, 1962, this reputation was shattered when 3 prisoners managed to escape, fooling the tight security. The key players in this escape, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin, who were brothers and had been convicted for bank robbery. The third was Frank Morris, a man who had been in and out of prison for years due to his involvement in bank robberies. The fourth was Alan West, who had tried to escape from other jails before and was placed in Alcatraz for maximum security. Alan West had actually figured out how to escape as early as 1960. He discovered a vent in his cell that could be used to break out, but he kept this information to himself for a while. Over the next couple of years, he shared the plan with the other 3 prisoners, and they started to work together. They managed to shift to Block B, where they continued to plan in secrecy. On the morning of July 12, 1962, as usual, the staff began the morning count. When they checked the cells, they found that 3 prisoners were missing. Upon further inspection, they discovered that the beds of the 3 men had been replaced with dummy heads made from soap and plaster. The heads were so realistic that they fooled the guards. But when one of the dummies fell and broke, the staff realized that the prisoners had escaped. Despite extensive searches, no one could find any trace of them. The authorities believed that it was impossible for them to have escaped the island, but their disappearance remains unsolved. To this day, no one knows how they managed to escape from such a high-security facility. It was discovered that the 3 prisoners had escaped by breaking the small vents attached to the walls of their cells. The surprise came when it was found that there were not just 3 but 4 damaged vents in total. Yes, the 4th vent belonged to Alan West's cell, who had failed to get his vent out for some reason. Alan West now clearly knew that there was no way out for him. Therefore, he decided to help the investigators by informing them about the escape plan. Alan revealed that the idea of the escape was his. He told them that they had created dummy heads with hair they had stolen during a haircut session. Each of the 4 cells had a small vent attached to the back wall, measuring 5 by 9.5 inches. Alan was familiar with the layout of the cells because he had worked in maintenance at the prison. He knew that the walls were only 6 inches thick, and the vent hole could be easily enlarged. Over the course of 6 months, the 4 prisoners had been secretly enlarging this hole. They used spoons they stole from the kitchen to dig through the walls. Eventually, they created a drill machine using the motor from a vacuum cleaner. This drilling was done quietly during the musical activities in the prison, as there was a lot of noise at that time. The hole led to a corridor with no security, which eventually opened into a drain pipe leading to the roof of the block. The prisoners had also worked in maintenance on the roof. This allowed them to examine the area and find any possible routes for their escape. From the roof, they used another pipe to climb down and then scale the 15-foot-high fence to escape. They had prepared everything in advance. creating inflatable rafts by joining rubber raincoats. These raincoats were provided by the prison administration, which the prisoners had been collecting over time under various pretenses. They also made life jackets from the raincoats, which they believed would keep them afloat if they ended up in the water. However, the FBI was still wondering where the prisoners had gone. Alan West told them that, according to the escape plan, the prisoners would first cross the waters to Angel Island to land in the north of Alcatraz, where security was minimal. From there, they would steal a car and some clothes. Extensive searches were conducted in the areas around Alcatraz, but no reports of stolen cars or robberies were found. It seemed that the prisoners had managed to outwit the security and had disappeared into the sea. Alan West's story, however, turned out to be a lie meant to mislead the FBI. The footprints found on the roof of Block B, where the secret workshop had been set up, confirmed that Alan West's story was not entirely false. The FBI, along with the Coast Guard, Bureau of Prisons, and U.S. Marshals, began a search in the sea for the prisoners. Despite this, the prisoners or any sign of their raft or life jackets were not found. Later, a wooden paddle believed to be part of the raft was found floating in the sea. Additionally, 2 bags made from raincoats were discovered, containing personal items like family photos and letters belonging to the prisoners. After the escape, it was believed that the 3 prisoners never made it to land alive. The items they took with them were not the kind that could easily be discarded by any prisoner. In general, a dead body floats on the water's surface. But for months, the investigation team didn't find any bodies or body parts. One theory suggested that the prisoners didn't use the raft, but somehow made it to land on their own. After their escape in 1962, the FBI kept a close watch on the England brothers' family. In 1962, the same year the 3 prisoners escaped from Alcatraz, the England brothers' family began receiving postcards from an unknown sender during Christmas. England's mother also started receiving flower bouquets on Mother's Day. This exchange of postcards and bouquets continued until 1973, when England's mother passed away. At her funeral, 2 mysterious women were seen who were quite tall, heavily makeup, and had never been seen before. A few years later, when England's father passed away, 2 strangers with long beards were seen attending the funeral. They stayed for a while, stood in a corner, wept, and then disappeared. Family members later claimed that these 2 were John and Clarence England, who had somehow evaded the FBI and were still connected to the family. At England's mother's funeral, even a large FBI team couldn't catch them when the 2 brothers attended in disguise as women. 16 years passed with no leads, and in 1979, the FBI closed the case, handing over all responsibilities to the U.S. Marshals. However, what could the U.S. Marshals do differently? Under the U.S. Marshals, the investigation continued for years, but no trace of the 3 prisoners or any solid evidence surfaced. In 2018, the San Francisco police made a revelation that astonished everyone. They revealed that in 2013, they had received a letter signed by John England. In the letter, it was stated that the 3 prisoners had escaped from Alcatraz alive on the night of June 1962 and had been hiding in different places. Avoiding the FBI, the letter further claimed that Frank Morris had died in 2008, Clarence England in 2011, and that John himself, now 83 years old, was living in a secret location while battling cancer. He appealed to the authorities, offering to surrender if they promised to provide him with medical treatment. This letter created a great deal of confusion for investigators, and an analysis of John's fingerprints, DNA, and handwriting was conducted. However, the results were inconsistent, and the authenticity of the letter remained unclear. To this day, U.S. authorities do not have answers to all the questions surrounding this case. Over 60 years later, it remains unsolved and open. The case will remain open until either the 3 prisoners are caught, their bodies are found, or they live to an age of 99.